This is another archival upload of my previous mix critique videos. Again, I apologize for the vertical format that this video is about to switch to. This is numbers 16 through 20. Time for another mix critique. This one was sent in by Adrian. Let's check it out. First thing I'm noticing is the guitars are out of tune. Like that, the whole thing's just not gonna sound good if your guitars aren't properly tuned. Like you need to make sure that when you're recording, you have to tune after every single take. Because the problem is if you don't, then the one take that you nail it finally, you're out of tune. Other than the tuning issue, everything sounds really muddy and the guitar tone itself isn't great. The vocals sound pretty good, the bass isn't bad, but the drums, the cymbals are really washy. It sounds like you have some kind of a phase issue going on there. I did really like what you did with the vocals there. All right, so the biggest things I was really hearing is you gotta tune those guitars literally every take. Like, that's a big issue. The phase problems in the drums and the guitar tone in general, you're also having a lot of problems in your low end. So I would definitely recommend a good starting place for working on those is go check out some of my other videos. I've covered things on how to make sure there's no phase problems in your drums. I've covered things on how to sculpt your low end better and deal with low end problems. So definitely go check out some of those videos. I think they'll be really helpful for you. Back with another mix critique. This one was sent in by Jared. Let's check it out. I love the intro, everything's super thinned out, and then it kicks in. That was awesome. Honestly, tonally, everything sounds really good. Like, the mix sounds solid. I think the biggest thing I'm hearing is just a lack of overall volume. Like, you definitely need to get this mastered. The drums, specifically the kick and the snare, might be poking out a little too far over the top of everything else. That breakdown riff is awesome. You got some really tight guitar playing there. That's really well done. And honestly, once we got to the breakdown, the problem with the kick and snare poking out over the top kind of went away. Seems like everything else got louder in the breakdown, but the drums didn't. So where the drums are during the breakdown section, that's where they should be for the whole song. The cello in that middle section sounds so good. Right, the whole string section sounds phenomenal, but it's probably a little loud over all the other instruments, so maybe bring that down a little bit. So overall, Jared, that was a great mix. I think the biggest things I'm hearing is that needs to be mastered better. Like, that needs to be much louder. There needs a little bit more compression on it. The kick and the snare are poking out a little too far over everything else. And when we get to that string section at the end, the strings are really overpowering all the other instruments. You definitely got to bring those strings down a little bit. Time for another mix critique. This one was sent in by Robert. Let's check it out. So first impressions, I really liked the panning on the guitar in the intro. That was really cool. Once it actually goes into it, the vocals are a little too quiet and the drums are a little too quiet. Sounds like you mix those guitars way too loud. So just in general, probably bring the volume of the guitars down, and that should solve the problem with a single move rather than bringing the vocals up and the drums up. And all right, going into that little thinned out guitar back and forth section, right as we went out of the section before it and went into that quieter section, there was an explosion sound effect there, and that doesn't fit there. Explosion sound effects are really good for starting new sections in general, but this particular section, everything kind of drops out. You're kind of doing an explosion into a quiet section. You kind of need everything to just drop out there and let it just be the guitars. Let the transition effect be the absence of everything else. So overall, Robert, that was a pretty solid mix. The weird thing is your biggest strength is also your biggest weakness. Your guitar tone is awesome. Like, I love the sound of those guitars. They sound really fucking good, but they're way too loud. They are completely overpowering every other section of the track. You definitely need to bring those guitars down a lot. Time for another mix critique. This one was sent in by Gareth. Let's check it out. I really liked the tone in the intro. It sounded great, but the performance was a little sloppy. That needs to be tightened up a little bit. That will only take a moment. Just look me in So everything sounds pretty good, but I noticed that you specifically asked about the guitar volume. You said that you know that people generally tend to mix their own instrument too loud. You definitely did overcompensate. The guitars are definitely way too quiet now. Those definitely need to come up a lot. I understand you were anticipating there was going to be a problem, so you tried to fix that, but in reality, I think that you're just thinking too much when it comes to that. Like, just mix it, man. Do what sounds good. If it sounds good to you, it probably does sound good in general, and if it's not, somebody will tell you. Like, don't fix a problem that isn't there. All right, the screams sound really good, but the clean vocals sound really muddy. There's way too much low-end buildup in the clean vocals. Definitely got to take care of that. All right, so Garrett, that was a pretty good song overall. From a songwriting perspective, I felt like everything after the last chorus was kind of extraneous. When you had that long, drawn-out quiet section, and then it went into like a breakdown slash like kind of almost a guitar solo, that felt like it didn't belong with the song. I would personally just cut it at that last chorus. As far as the mix goes, all your tones are really good. The biggest thing is just your overall balance. I think you need to bring the vocals up so that they're at the same volume as that lead synth line, and then your rhythm guitars need to come up so they're like just below the vocals. Time for another mix critique. This one was sent in by Marcus. Let's check it out. All right, that intro was great. I love the way it was building, especially when the bass started coming in the background and it was just like doing steady notes, getting louder and louder. And then it hit the point that it should have exploded and it just, the energy dropped off and the guitar playing is very out of time all of a sudden. The mix is okay. It needs a lot more low end in it though. The biggest thing I'm hearing is a production problem. First of all, the performance could be a lot tighter than it is, but also the biggest section, the part that has the most, the part that seems the most energetic is that intro section, and every time it repeats, everything else just has very little energy by comparison. You made that intro part sound so good that it's crippled the rest of your song. I like the idea of this part, but the execution was not done well. Whatever instrument that is, I think it's a ukulele. It's really hard to tell. It sounds like nylon strings, whatever it is. First of all, it's out of tune, which is just painful, honestly. Yeah, the tuning on whatever that was is like literally making me cringe. You need to be way more on top of your tuning at the time of recording. You can fix tone later. You can't fix tuning later, at least not easily. Your performance as well, you need to get that a lot tighter.